So initially, the story you're about to hear, as well as other stories like it, I had conceptualized to be the very beginning of each episode. But we got feedback that it just didn't fit. And so I decided to try these out as their own bonus episodes or like mini episodes or whatever we want to call them. So let me know if this works. I have no idea as its own episode, but I'm basically going to tell you a story from my life and talk a little bit after to give you more context. And for feedback, if you're down to give us feedback, that would be amazing. If you can give us feedback in the comments on YouTube, I get really overwhelmed by stuff online, but I think I can check the comments on YouTube there. So that would be really helpful. All right. Thanks for listening to Full Spectrum. You've got to let them go, Molly. The episodes aren't helping you. My psychiatrist's words hung in the air. He was talking, of course, about hypomania, the unpredictable highs of bipolar II disorder that contrast with the lows of depression. He looked at me with that familiar calm intensity. Good work doesn't come from moments of brilliance. It comes from doing consistent work. Right now, the hypomanic episodes are keeping you from being consistent. But were they? I couldn't believe it. You see, that was the problem. Hypomania felt too good. I could be the life of the party, work endless hours, dream up huge ideas. Why would I want to give that up? He continued. What happened to you this past week? What happened? The snowboarding accident. But I kept reminding him it was a minor accident. Yes, I'd been going faster than usual. Feeling kinda fearless, kinda invincible. Then the world spun. When I opened my eyes, I had a brain contusion and a helmet that would have to be thrown away. They wanted me to go to the ER. Ugh, my friend drove me, but I was riding some kind of high. I laughed the whole way there, marveling about how the dogs in West Virginia looked like wolves. In the emergency room, I still felt nothing. As I was wheeled into the CT scan, I stared up at the fluorescent lights, grinning, thinking, this is overkill. I'm totally fine. That night, the adrenaline wore off. Reality crashed in. The accident, what had actually happened. I called my parents, sobbing, near panic. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. I kept repeating. I told them it wasn't a big deal, that it wasn't serious. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it had been a little too close for comfort. Was this the thing I was so desperate to hold on to? I had always thought I was destined to live out the chaos I was dealt. Bipolar II disorder, this is what it's like. But the question clawed at me. Had I in some way chosen this chaos? It was a terrifying question, because it suggested that maybe I wasn't entirely the victim of my own story. Days later, the doctor's words cut deeper than the accident itself. Molly, you're lucky you were wearing a helmet. Without it, this accident would have been life-altering. That's when it hit me. The sheer fragility of everything. The razor-thin line between a minor accident and something catastrophic. How incredibly vulnerable we are out in the world. Suddenly, the world felt dangerous. Had I always been this close to disaster? I wondered, my heart pounding as I crossed the street. And if we are, why dance with the devil? I had been avoiding this truth for so long. We'd gotten the depression under control. But I had clung to hypomania like a lifeline, hoping my psychiatrist wouldn't notice I was still riding those electric highs. If you take away the hypomania, you'll rob me of the very thing that's gotten me this far. But the facade was cracking. Even as I said it, I wondered, did I even believe that anymore? Hypomania wasn't my savior. It was that person at the party who exaggerates their stories, stands too close, talks too loud, and stays too long. At first, they seem fun, but soon they become exhausting. You realize they're a liability. With the help of medication, I began shutting down the euphoric highs, grieving the loss of that feeling of limitless potential. It's hard, isn't it? Letting go of the one thing that feels like it's keeping you alive. For me, it was hypomania. For you, maybe it's something else. Perfectionism, control, the need to be wanted. But isn't it funny? The things that make us feel like we're winning are often the very things holding us back. Like me in my psychiatrist's office, fiercely defending the very thing that was ruining me. Even now, I know I'll always face moments where I wonder if I'm still chasing that same rush. But somewhere between the fading highs and the stillness that followed, I began to understand something about hope. It wasn't a sudden epiphany. It was quieter than that. An idea I wasn't sure I believed in yet, but couldn't entirely let go of. That maybe, just maybe, there's something worth moving toward, even if I can't see it yet. Okay, so that story was from several years ago when I was living in DC in a very chaotic time in my life. So when I first started working on this story, I had really conceptualized it to be about risk. And that was really the thing I noticed in the aftermath of the snowboarding accident, was that I became hyper aware of risk everywhere, which was like crossing the street, getting into a car, the risk of everyday existing. You know, it's this idea of like how fragile everything is, how you can get a head injury from just doing something dumb, and suddenly everything shifts in your life and you see things differently. This story is largely about that journey, right? I experienced so much shame and embarrassment on so many levels. There's so many different elements I felt that. That was me apologizing to my parents, this like pleading apology of I'm sorry, I'm so reckless. And it took me until fairly recently to look back and realize this wasn't just a story about risk and how that can impact you as a person. It was also a story of hope. And I'm sure that was influenced by the fact that that's the space I now work in. And so it's kind of the lens through which I'm seeing the world more and more. I realized that in giving up hypomania, it meant I'd had control. I'd had agency. And if you heard the last 2 episodes on hope and the science of hope, you know how relevant that word is, agency. You realize you have control over your destiny, over the future. So when these bad things that you're creating happen in your life, you're like, yep, this is just what it's like. But you can change that. And that's a tough pill to swallow, even if it means your life will get better. I just kind of thought being kind of chaotic was just who I am. Like, this is my wiring. Bipolar disorder was something I had kind of conceptualized as something I had to work around. But bipolar disorder is extremely treatable. And initially, I really wasn't making this connection between the accident and bipolar disorder. And it was my psychiatrist that kept bringing them together and being like, you were just in the ER. You have a brain contusion. Like, you need to get treated adequately for bipolar II disorder. And I was like, no, it's just a coincidence. It happened. And then it was like, well, I was laughing in the emergency room as they were like giving me a CT scan. You know, I did this really unhinged Facebook post on the way to the ER about how I was like in an accident, haha, like helmet's gone, but the dogs in West Virginia look like wolves. I put that in the story because I distinctly remember writing that. Like, yeah, it was pretty unhinged. It was a little out there. It probably wasn't how I would normally have responded to like being in something so unpleasant. So it was this moment of like, okay, maybe these are connected. The idea of change, even good change, is terrifying. And there's this quote, I've heard it quoted by neuroscientists before, actually, because it's related to cognitive bias. And it's, we'll always choose a familiar hell over an unfamiliar heaven. Familiarity is king. You know, we cling to that. And so that's why it's really hard to end a toxic relationship or quit a job that doesn't align with your values. It's really hard to do that. But why? Because we have this bias toward familiarity. We choose the familiar hell. It's hard to give up something you know for something you don't, even if the thing you don't know will be so much better. Hypomania was so familiar for me. I really knew how to operate within it. It caused damage to myself, to others, but I knew it. It was something I knew well. That kind of thing, it feels really safe in a warped way. And to be honest, I was resisting healing. That was what I was doing. Because I think, too, change, even good change, there's kind of a gamble in it. You're trading in something you know for something you're not sure you'll get. It's a gamble. And one of the things I've realized through this and many other experiences is that when we give something up, we just imagine it's gone, it's absent. But something always comes in and takes its place. So with this journey, I thought I had lost something that had given me my spark, right? Giving up hypomania. But what I had gained, what had filled in that space was this life of stability I didn't know I'd have access to. The question kind of becomes, what does it take to choose the unfamiliar heaven? What is that? And I'm still learning, right? This is the reason I've lived quite a bit of my life in dysfunction. I think part of it I'm coming to understand is just getting more comfortable with discomfort, tolerating discomfort, because there's so much discomfort of pursuing an unfamiliar heaven, of pursuing a change in our life that we know will be better for us. And there's so many things where I'm like still walking through that familiar hell, relishing in the familiarity. But I do think there's a beauty in getting to see at least sometimes what's on the other side. All right. So thanks for being here with me. I'll see you in the next episode.